I say this to everybody who talks to me. I like the kid. I probably like him more than a lot of people here in Philadelphia in terms of abilities. Just besides what he gives you, the intangibles off the field, I like him on the field. I just think that knowing this town and knowing the front office, I just think that there's not going to be the necessary patience to endure maybe the 2 or 3 more years that you'd have to get to a position where he is a quarterback who can get you to the playoffs. Now, he did last year, but I'm talking the playoffs with a chance to win.
The biggest, most important draft in the history of this Philadelphia football franchise. The JAKIB Media Sports 2022 NFL Draft Special. Live on 6abc.com from the Ocean Casino and Resort in Atlantic City. Presented by First Trust Bank, the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. IBEW Local 98, Stateside Vodka, United Healthcare, Mesa Law, 6ABC, and Budweiser, the official beer of the Philly sports fan.
We got the man himself, Jeff McLane.
Why is he always late? Why is he always late?
Yell at him, and he's got a prep hat on, and I'm a Bonner guy. I mean, what are we going to do with this? Yeah. This is not right.
I'm always on time. Everything. I'm just technologically challenged. That's my problem.
You too?
Get in line, Jeff. You're on the right show, then, my man. The three of us, we struggle.
I'm struggle for this.
I hear you.
Guys, you guys are entering the new age. I like it.
Yeah. Take it.
I feel so good about meeting more and more people every day who are more technology illiterate or as illiterate as I am, because I'm always screaming them out. Hey, can somebody come here and help me do this? I still can't get it, Jeff. I still can't get the simple stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
Children.
Yes.
Cut and paste. Cut and paste is a monumental achievement to me. I can do it on my phone. I still can't cut and paste on a computer.
I can't do it on my phone, so we're even. We're even right there. Jeff, let me hit you with this, and you've done an unbelievable job chronicling everything leading up here to the draft, and always love your work at Inquirer.com. This is, it's interesting in that they're sitting here at 15 and 18, and Derek and I were just running through some teams that may grab quarterbacks, which would leave more meat on the bone, if you will, for the Eagles to grab at here. Just give me your sense here. How they view themselves going into this season. Do they view themselves as, hey man, we made the playoffs last year, upward from there? Or do they know down deep, we still got a long way to go? And how does that affect the way that you draft here at 15 and 18?
I think they feel like they're in between this transition period that Jeffrey Lurie spoke about last January after he fired Doug Peterson, and maybe being more kind of win now scenario. So I feel like they feel like, okay, yeah, we made some steps last season, going 9-8 and reaching the playoffs, but I know internally that they don't view that playoff appearance as if, we've arrived and we're there and we're close and we just need a few more holes to fill and we can compete for this thing. And obviously that's almost an obvious statement to make based upon looking at the quarterback position and what we know to be some serious lacking at various positions. That said, you never know. You never know how they sometimes they've before have convinced themselves that maybe they're closer than they were. That was the case in 2018 and 2019 and 2020. I would say specifically 2020 because 2018, 2019, you won a Super Bowl. You're a year or two removed from that, and you feel like you're close to getting back there again. 2020, they still thought that, and when it was increasingly clear that a lot of the moves that they had made just weren't good enough and they were slipping away. But I think there has been a reality check in that building. And I feel like they're going to approach this draft knowing that, yes, we aren't looking for quick fixes here. We're looking to still build long term.
So Jeff, when you size up everything and you've done all the analysis, the mock drafts, and people constantly ask me this, so I'm going to ask you: if the Eagles stay at 15 and 18, what positions do you think they will attack first, and what positions should they attack first?
Yeah, I'm doing my mock draft, and then also my Eagles mock draft right now. And every time I look at the selections and how I feel it's going to play out, I don't have them standing pat at number 15.
Okay.
Because I don't think a quarterback is going to go before they are to pick, which means that a lot of the guys that I think that they're going to be interested, that they have a possibility to get if they were to stay at number 15, aren't going to be there. So I think, and Howie, as we've seen over the years, when he's done well in the first round, he's moved up, and he's done so in the first 13 picks. He's a 15 now. And so I think that they'll move up. I'm projecting Jordan Davis to be the guy that they need to move up a few picks to get. I don't, they have the ammo to do it. They have second and third round picks where they can do that. And then they have the 18th pick that they can also trade back on and to recoup that second round pick that they've used to move up to get Davis. Certainly Jameson Williams, I think, is a guy that they're going to be interested in. In my mock, I think he goes top 10, and I'm not sure if the Eagles can go up the top 10 to get him. And I don't know if they're going to do that again. They did it last year for Devontae Smith. I'm not saying they're not going to draft a receiver in the first round and pull that out 3 years in a row. I don't think it's ever happened. So I wonder if Howie's willing to do that at a position in which typically they don't draft receivers that high. But those would be the two guys that I think that they'd be willing to move up, that they think they can get in within striking distance. Now, if like Derek Stingley was to drop, or Kyle Hamilton, maybe those are guys that I could see them moving up for. And then at number 18, I say, if they move up, I feel like at 18, then they're more inclined to move back, because there are a lot of teams that are it's going to be easier for them to move up because there are a lot of teams that want to move out of that top 10. It's going to be harder for them to move back, but I feel where they're positioned, there could be a team now all of a sudden wanting to move up to get one of those quarterbacks.
And Jeff, I like both the names you just put out there in Davis and Jameson Williams, and you just touched on it right there. But I look at the defensive backfield, other than Slay, and that's a mess. And I know you got to be able to get to the quarterback, and it won't matter who's back there if you're not getting to the quarterback, and they didn't nearly enough last year. But how pressing is that as well to get some not just depth, but some guys who can step in right now and help?
Yeah, and they didn't do much to address that need in free agency. They tried to. They tried to get Marcus Williams. They tried to get Justin Reed. Those guys were just out of their price range or what they were willing to offer. Cornerback, they had some conversations with various guys. That market wasn't as deep for them. So they're going into this draft with some pretty obvious needs at both those positions. I don't think you want to press it. Howie's never drafted a cornerback in the first round. Everyone talks about linebacker. He's never drafted a cornerback. He's never drafted a safety in the first round. I'm not saying he's not willing to do that. If there's a special guy there, a difference maker there, then he may do it. Maybe Trent McDuffie is a guy. I don't know if they view him probably as a difference maker. I could see them, if they can't trade out, taking him at number 18. I mean, look, just because you want to trade out doesn't mean it's going to happen. And Howie says before, you're waiting for that phone to ring, or you're making calls and no one's picking it up, or no one's calling you. So sometimes you just got to take the best guy on your board. But I go a lot by what they've done before, and how I know how Howie thinks and how he views that first round, and having some of those guys on 5, investing so much in them at that position and the value of it. I just wonder if they're willing to expend that much on that position. And honestly, if they don't get one in the first round, doesn't mean they can't find a talented guy in the second or third round. And that seems to be where there's a lot of value in this year's draft.
Hey, Jeff, let me ask you this. Were you surprised that Jeffrey Lurie gave Howie a 3-year extension, a 1 year, maybe a 2? Were you surprised they gave him a 3-year extension to continue overseeing this retooling process?
No, not at all. I mean, 3 years makes sense because it was going to run concurrent with Nick Sirianni, and that was expected. They weren't going to allow him go into the last year of his contract, which is this next year was, and not have him extended. You could argue whether Howie deserved it or not, but when he decided last offseason to bring Howie back, and after firing Doug Peterson, that to me just all but said that Howie was going to be here through, at least signed through, the contract that Nick Sirianni has.
Jeff, let me ask you, when everything went down with Chip and Howie was kind of pushed aside and he came back, he talked about how he sort of looked at things differently. He traveled, he talked to different leaders, or in all sports and business and all that. And there was a bit of a philosophical move. At least that's what he said. And they certainly had success in the immediate, aftermath. Do you feel like with the way that things went in 20, when things really went off the rails, they won 4 games, has there been any kind of shift here, or was it just, hey, they hit on last year's draft? It happens sometimes. Is he listening more? Is he more open to more suggestion from others? Has anything changed, or is it kind of the same situation?
No, I think there were several changes that were made. And I think some of it just had to do with Howie kind of realizing that what he had done previously wasn't working. And what that was is when they got into those late first round picks, or even sometimes the second day picks, Howie's job is to almost curate what he's hearing from all the different departments in the building. And it's gotten that all those departments have gotten vast and big. You got to deal with so many different guys. And I think sometimes maybe Howie lacks the kind of wherewithal, or maybe the gumption to be like, okay, this is the guy that I love. I'm going to go out on a limb, and this is going to be, whether he's not getting it from the coaching staff or the personnel staff, et cetera. And I felt like, from just talking from people within the building over the last several years, is that was one of the problems. Every year it would change. It'd be like, oh, I'm going to listen more than with the coaches on this one, or I'm going to listen more with the scouts on this one, or I'm going to listen more with the analytics guys, or I'm going to go with the owner. As we all know, that Jeffrey Lurie certainly loves the draft, and I don't think Jeffrey's sitting there deciding which picks are being taken, but he will certainly offer his opinion. And your boss is offering his opinion, that can kind of sway what direction you're going in. And I felt like last year he kind of narrowed that down to, look, let's just listen to these. I think he focused more on what the scouting department. Yes, he was listening to the coaches. Yes, he was listening to all these other departments. But with a new coaching staff, and just not really sure about what they want, et cetera, and not having been with them for so long, he focused more on what Andy Weidel and his staff wanted. And I mean, you could just sit here and just say they drafted 2 Alabama players. Well, geez, why didn't they do that for all the previous drafts? We've seen how they come over into the NFL, and maybe it wasn't so hard, but he had to do some maneuvering to get to those 2 guys, and and they did all the necessary legwork on that. And I just felt like it was just more of a streamlining of the process, and that's why they were successful. Now, look, 1 year does not make a good draft. These guys have to kind of be long term. But I feel like, based upon what we saw in this first year, Devontae Smith and
Landon Dickerson.
Excuse me. Make for 2 very good first 2 picks, and then you have Milton Williams, who projects to be a potential starter down the road, and some other guys on the day 3 picks that have some potential.
Are you surprised that Howie didn't do a little bit more during this offseason to get Jalen Hurts maybe a few more tools for the offensive in terms of weapons? Now, we know they were going to pay high-priced money like we saw some of these wide receivers getting, but there was still some veteran presence. There still are some veteran presence out there that could help ease some of the burden. They got Zach Pascal from the Colts. Okay. But are you surprised they didn't go out and maybe get a few more of veteran-type players to help make the transition here?
They looked into Christian Kirk. I mean, if you guys saw his contract, they were out on that. I think they had some interest in Allen Robinson. Robinson, you saw where he wanted to go to a team that has a better quarterback and a better, much more a better chance at winning the Super Bowl next season. And I also don't think they were willing to pay what he had gotten. Their salary cap situation it's better than it had been, but it's still not great.
Right.
And they have young guys that they're going to have to. They're going to have to pay Devontae Smith a second contract at some point, and you're seeing what receivers are getting. So you have to think about that long term. And then you look at the draft, and there's a lot of wide receivers there. So do you really want to expend that much on that position? You can get a guy under contract for 4 or 5 years at an affordable cost, and potentially maybe even 1 or 2 of them in this year's draft. So I think that's how they view it. I think I would be shocked if they didn't get a receiver by day 2 in this draft. So that in a way is helping Jalen Hurts. I don't think they want to go overboard
Right.
and investing so much on the offensive side, because we've seen that now. They've done that in the last 4 drafts. They haven't drafted defense early since 2017. So they have to think about that as well. And we saw the defense was certainly lacking in certain positions last year. So I'm not really terribly surprised by it, and they definitely made the effort. But I wasn't surprised at how he didn't go overboard in trying to address it.
Jeff, we know ultimately money talks, and in some of these deals with like Christian Kirk, in my opinion, they got way overpaid. That's fine. But do you think some of the challenges, I'll put it that way, of trying to land a receiver fall on the fact that these guys just don't feel like they're maybe going to put the numbers up and have the offensive success with Jalen Hurts and the way that this offense is situated right now? Is that hurting them in getting guys to come here?
I think you have to consider it. I felt like even talking to people in the building, maybe there was a little too much of mentioning that excuses, and I don't think that's entirely fair to Jalen. But yeah, I mean, look at again Allen Robinson. I mean, look at the situation there. Let's say that they were in on Tyreek Hill. Let's say they were in on Devontae Adams. Let's say that they're in on Deebo Samuel. These guys are picking their teams now, or at least that are, if the team's interested in them, they can say, I want to go here, there, or wherever, which is, I mean, they're almost now in quarterback territory. Not quite so, but you're seeing a little bit more of that. So yeah, you have to wonder, how is that factoring into the decisions at the wide receivers, the quarterback position, that is. But I think it's more than that. It's look at the roster, look at the way the Eagles have handled certain guys' contracts before. I mean, I think Philly is a more desirable place than a number of teams. I don't know if it's as desirable as they believe it is. That being said, as we mentioned at the top, they know that they're not completely there yet. So that factors into it as well. But I think too much of the blame has been placed on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts versus the team overall.
A lot of people out there screaming to bring Deebo Samuel in there. Would you give up draft capital to bring him in? He's a phenomenal player, in terms of being a utility weapon. But is he worth giving up first-round pick and more to bring him in here? Who's to say he would fit into this scheme the way he fits in Kyle Shanahan's scheme?
Right. And it's all about value. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if you can get him for a certain number of picks and at a certain number in terms of his contract, then maybe you're willing to do it. I mean, look, Howie pretty much, as we all know, does his due diligence on anybody out there, and certainly on a player as talented as Deebo Samuel. That being said, as you mentioned, is it worth expending all that when you have the draft?
Yeah.
And I know viewers are probably watching this saying, well, we can't trust them in how they drafted receivers. So why not get someone that we know that you've seen him do it on the field and has the potential to be that good for so many X years? He's only 26 years old.
Right.
But I still feel like there's got to be there's got to be a reckoning of some sort with the wide receiver position and what these guys are making. And I feel like the Eagles, Howie maybe not purposely, but maybe subconsciously in his mind saying, okay, I just can't be willing to pay this amount of money for a position. And if you look at Super Bowl winners, you look at teams that are perennially considered, I mean, not all of them have these types of wide receivers. They have the quarterbacks. And I know right now the Eagles are in position because they're on a rookie contract with Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
You do have Devontae Smith. You have the potential to draft a receiver in this year's draft. Is it worth going out there and spending all these picks and how much you need to pay Deebo Samuel versus what you get in the draft? And I think that's the question they're asking themselves. And I think that they're probably landing squarely on the latter.
Staying on that, Jeff, and I'm not saying there's this great market out there. I don't think people are knocking down the Eagles' door, but are they going to be actively, have they been, will they continue to be draft night trying to move Rhaegar? And if so, what are they looking to get back if they can unload him on somebody?
A bag of balls? I mean,
that sound effect just said it already. Yeah.
I mean, how he's kind of like So we had a draft availability last week, and he was asked about the wide receivers and past mistakes, et cetera. And Jalen Rhaegar wasn't even mentioned, but how he took the opportunity to kind of pump him up.
Oh, geez.
Me that they're trying to increase his marketability.
Yeah.
Which sometimes works, believe it or not. But if you watch the film of him and you kind of, the Eagles have lived with him now. Some of these teams haven't lived with him yet. And I'm not saying Jalen's a bad guy. I know he works hard, et cetera. Confidence has been the number one issue to me with Jalen. He's just, the confidence hasn't been there. Then you brought Devontae Smith in. It clicked for him much easier. And all of a sudden you become the third or fourth or maybe even sometimes the fifth option.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think if the Eagles had their druthers, they'd move him. But I mean, he's a first round pick. Howie has to save face. He can't all of a sudden load him for a bag of balls. Now you could package him in a trade to make it not seem as bad, and you just move on from losing him. But that's, you have a value there, a value pick when you draft him in the first round. And I just feel like it's gonna be tough for them to move him, and then on top and get something back in return that they feel is worth it. And it's going to be tough to just release him because of you're still taking a pretty significant cap hit because, again, you've had the first round pick. I've heard his name banted about, he's on the market. Well, geez, yeah, of course he is. Look at what he's done these first 2 years. And they would surely, if they were able to move on, if they were to draft somebody in the first or second round, it'd give more reason to get rid of him. Because he's not going to play. He's not going to be factored in as much. I just find it very hard, and I think it's more than likely Jalen Rhaegar's here for another year.
Hey Jeff. Speaking of trying to save face, I got to get your thoughts on them moving Whiteside, who I refer to as not Arthega Whiteside, but Umbrella Whiteside, because it will never be old of his mom holding the umbrella over him in training camp. Your thoughts on them moving him to tight end? It seems like they're trying to do whatever they can to prove that this guy has some NFL value. Well,
I think by this point, it's pretty much, last resort thing. And last year, he kind of almost played a little bit of, he was essentially a tight end. He was out there blocking on rundowns. And he's pretty good at that. Mm-hmm. So it seems like a natural transition. He's pretty good at special teams. You more than likely want a third tight end to fill that role than I think a fifth wide receiver, although, fifth wide receivers have to play special teams. But I think your fifth receiver, you'd like somebody with more upside and someone that you're maybe developing for the long term. At this point, we know that J.J. Arthega-Whiteside just doesn't have that. He can't play the wide receiver position in the NFL because he can't get separation. Maybe that doesn't hurt him much running up against linebackers. And then maybe he has a chance to kind of fill a role because the backup, besides Dallas Goedert, you have some holes. There isn't really an obvious guy, especially the injury to Tyree Jackson, and then you have the third string tight end,
Richard Rodgers. There's been a bunch of guys.
No, the other one was
Jack Stoll.
Yeah, Jack Stoll
was fine and kind of filled that role, but I don't know if he was as much. I don't think he was a great blocker.
Yeah.
And if your third tight end, maybe you want them as a blocker. I know that JJ's went out there and he's embraced the move. It's something that I'm not entirely sure how it came about. Maybe they had mentioned to him in his exit interview, and he's like, okay, this is something I feel like is my best shot at making the 53. Mm-hmm. So he went about resculpting his body, adding bulk, muscle, some weight to handle the rigors of playing that position. But again, he's 6'2", 225 last year. Mm-hmm. Let's say he gets to 6'2", 240. Maybe that's big enough. I don't know. It's still on the smaller side to me for that position. And if you're on the smaller side, you better be a little bit more of an athletic freak, like let's say, Burton was here when he's the third or second or third tight end. And I don't just know he's that type of guy.
Jeff, last one from me here. Finish this sentence. In 2022, the Eagles starting quarterback will be Jalen Hurts or other.
Oh, Jalen Hurts, 2022.
I'm sorry, 2024. Excuse me, 2024.
2023. You mean 2023 or 2024?
No, I'm going to give him 24. No, 23. Let's go 23.
No, I don't think it's Hurts. I just don't. And this is a difficult position the Eagles have put him in. Now that being said, I think Jalen has the type of mental makeup to handle it, so that's why they're able to do it. Jalen, I don't think he's gonna bat an eye, and knowing that this is his 1 year to go prove himself. That being said, is he gonna be able to do it? I have my serious doubts about it. I say this to everybody who talks to me. I like the kid. I probably like him more than a lot of people here in Philadelphia in terms of his abilities. Just besides what he gives you, the intangibles off the field, I like him on the field. I just think that knowing this town and knowing the front office, I just think that there's not going to be the necessary patience to endure maybe the 2 or 3 more years that we get. You'd have to get to a position where he is a quarterback who can get you to the playoffs. Now, he did last year, but I'm talking the playoffs with a chance to win on an annual basis. I think he has that potential. Is he the type of quarterback where he's going to be a top 5 elite guy and you're going to win basically? He could just strap the team on his shoulder and will him to victory, or just by passing ability, which you have to have to be considered among those types of quarterbacks? I don't think so. That being said, you can win with Jalen Hurts. I just don't think the patience is going to be there. And then also, and then next year you're going to have quarterbacks. They've equipped themselves with at least 2 first-rounders to go get that quarterback, and at some point, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni are going to have to make a decision. Now we're talking about 2 years left on their contract. They're going to have to make a decision at the quarterback position.
No doubt. Jeff, good stuff, man. Again, follow Jeff.
Thank you, man.
Jeff_McLane, Inquirer.com. As I mentioned off the top of the show, I think Jeff does an amazing job as an old school reporter. Hard questions, digging stuff up, sources, you name it. He does a phenomenal job.
He ruffles the feathers. I love it.
Well, he's not afraid to ruffle feathers. That's exactly. He doesn't have any pom poms out. That's for sure.
And he said, you said you would come back Friday to talk about the first round with us.
Yeah. Let me know. Let me know what time.
Good.
We'll be able to do that. To look into what happens. I mean, I'm not a big pre-draft guy, but I love the draft. Because that's where the real stuff happens. That's where actually, like all this BS that's been happening for the last 2 months. How much did it really pan out?
Exactly. I'm sick of talking about it. I want to see it happen. Let's do it.
Almost there, guys. We're almost there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Jeff.
You, Jeff. Appreciate it. That is Jeff McLane from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Great stuff from Jeff Gunner. So we'll come back. Let's come back and kind of rehash some of the things that Jeff had to say. We'll continue to dive into this draft a little bit too. We'll sneak in some Phillies. Coming up at 2:00, we'll have Dave Zingaro from NBC Sports Philadelphia. He will join us. We'll talk some Birds and kind of their state of where they're at right now going into the draft in just 2 days. He's D Gunn. I'm Rob Ellis. You are watching Sports Take, JAKIB Media YouTube Network.
It's the biggest, most important draft in the history of this Philadelphia football franchise. The JAKIB Media Sports 2022 NFL Draft Special. Live on 6abc.com from the Ocean Casino and Resort in Atlantic City. Presented by First Trust Bank, the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. IBEW Local 98, Stateside Vodka, United Healthcare, Mesa Law, 6ABC, and Budweiser, the official beer of the Philly sports fan.